Well, howdy ho there, folks. How are we doing today? Hopefully you're all doing absolutely peachy keen fantastic, full of love of the Lord and all that great stuff. So I'm going to be playing some Stalker 2 today. This is actually pre-recorded footage and all that. I recorded it, and what I decided was that it would be good to have a non-commentary track for people who just wanted to see like the first 30 minutes of the game or so, and also have a commentary track because I like talking. And I also think that Stalker is a really great game franchise. This part right here confused the crap out of me. I just like spawned in, looked down, and like all this other stuff. But here we get some interesting backstory, and this is what I find really cool. Look at that. There's a big explodey hole. I really like the idea of Stalker because I always love the idea of like these like really strange anomalous objects in a world that otherwise I think makes a lot of sense. It's basically just like our world, so that's pretty neat. I've read the original book, Roadside Picnic. It took me a second there, and I rather enjoy it. I've always enjoyed Stalker type stuff and SCPs.
Are you sure the perimeter surrounding the zone is really enough? If a powerful emission were to occur, we...
Listen, the zone has remained stable for years. Besides, we didn't establish the most advanced institution in human history without first guaranteeing its safety. As the head of the Scientific Institute for Research of the Chernobyl area, or CIRCA for short, I believe the wonders that we will bring to the world far outweigh the potential risks.
Ooh.
How big are these risks exactly?
The zone reveals a whole new world. We can stick with the old one, fearing change. But tell me, do you want our descendants to remember us as cowards? Or as those who dared to venture forward to a new, better humanity?
Crazy. What if it's a better cat-manity? What if it's a better cat world where I use anomalous objects to make very fun things happen? Oh, look, a red sky! I think that it would be also very interesting to see these sorts of things because I would think that they are kind of like gifts from God, But going into areas where they basically take a lot of it is like they take logic and flip it on its head, and it's something I rather enjoy. Like there's just strange things that like maybe they do have an explanation, but like it's rather difficult for you to get the whole explanation. And
checkpoint could be on alert after the emission, but there's another way.
It's also this like really interesting thing where they're exploring greed and this idea of
Hope you didn't lose your secret artifact along the way.
like there are basically miracles out here, but people go and they take these objects for profit and are trying to make
But I've got this shiny little thing to recharge it.
money off of it, but they're also trying to get like anomalous material that they can experiment with and try to understand. And I think that's just really interesting and cool. I really enjoy all of these different things. I also find it very weird that this guy apparently agreed to take him out here and did all this, but didn't look at the thing even like once before.
This one is not from the zone.
Oh, I bet. Where'd you find it?
In my laundry basket.
I like the acting here. I think the
You're
acting's good.
talking to, huh? You have any idea what this scanner cost me? If it's not an artifact, it's gonna blow us all to hell! I won't let my hard work come to nothing because of you. I won't let you push it down the shit.
Yeah, maybe the guy with gun who wants to go into the zone is not the person you should be
a new home.
talking to like that. But, you know, it's also very interesting because it kind of explores this whole idea of like hyper-normalization, which I think is a little bit of what the book is about. Not necessarily the biggest part, but I do find it very interesting, this idea of everybody just kind of goes along with the zone. It doesn't seem like, after a while, it just becomes another part of things, where like everything's kind of going wrong, and everybody knows it's going wrong. It's this incredibly dangerous thing, but ultimately they all just kind of roll with it, which is also like a way to describe kind of the situation that was going on with the late era Soviet government, and like how things are going wrong. Everybody knew things were going wrong, and people weren't really super buying into a lot of what was being told to them by the government, but they were still kind of rolling with it. And I think that's pretty interesting
Give me a sit rep.
to have going on here.
Extensive damage caused by...
Also, this game looks fantastic, I just want to say.
Copy that. Dispatching a response.
The other thing that I find very interesting about like just the whole concept of the zone is just this place where humanity's supremacy is made clear for the farce that it is in this universe, where they can really see that they don't know what they're dealing with, and even when they're trying to figure out like what the best way forward is, they have no idea. They're basically like kind of like when you were trying to like detect an anomaly in the older games and you would take a bolt and you're just throwing it at things. They're kind of just like throwing things at the wall and hoping it sticks and hoping it works out. And I think that's very interesting because it's also like this could be very hopeful. You could get some pretty amazing things out of this, but the truth is that, you know, people are gonna exploit it for the wrong reasons. And there's also like in the book there's this whole thing that like the guy's kid, the main character's kid, has something kind of weird going on with them or her, because I'm pretty sure it's a her. Yeah, I think it's his daughter. Because he's a stalker and because he spends so much time in the zone, and it just starts to affect you the more you're like in, like if you're in the zone, like over time things are going to start to change about you. And I also find that really kind of cool. It's like the thing in Annihilation. I'm trying to remember what the books were called because I read the book as well. I think the book is a lot better than the movie. I think the movie's still good, but I like the book a lot more. I think it explores how weird all of this is a good deal more. Maybe at certain points provide more explanation than I would like, but like just the trippy alien nature of it is very, very interesting to me. I turn off my lights sometimes to just try and, because if I hear people or if I think people are nearby, I turn off the light just to make it easier to stealth. But it is also really interesting because I think Stalker has often captured my attention too, because it has like this kind of Slavic undertone to everything, obviously, and I really enjoy that as a thing to explore. I really enjoy just like the Russian military aesthetic, and like Eastern European culture is very interesting to me for a variety of reasons. And so, oh, I missed a body there. Oh, that's fine. And so it's pretty interesting to me on that level. And seeing, I think this is also like one of those good series for pointing out like the fragility of our human ecosystem and the fragility of our understanding. You see, like, perception is kind of everything on a certain level. You know, our perception is what guides so much of the way we interact with the world around us. And, you know, stuff like this can show you that your perception is much more fluid and much easier to break isn't exactly the right word. But your perception is always going to be a certain amount of limited. in, you know, things like samadhi, and in certain special cases you get to see more. And you know, there are a couple of cases, but like most of the time your perception is very limited, and you're only going to be able to see what you're able to see. You're only able to see what's like in front of you sometimes. And you know, you can keep other things in your mind's eye, but ultimately there's the thing that is in front of you. And there's also like these thoughts and feelings that can be easily manipulated by it was very funny because I heard that thing and I kept thinking it was like behind the wall, and it was right there. But there are also lots of things that can change your perception and make it so that you experience things in like a new light, for instance. And that's part of what I really like about like Stalker series and Annihilation and all these other things, is like the idea that that these strange mutations kind of change our whole perception on mankind. Because you know, the visitors, the aliens in this series, and of course in the games, the Stalker games, like it's different. Like I like the idea of like the Roadside Picnic with like the aliens coming in more than anything, because like this whole idea of like changing perception, like once you realize that all of these are like alien artifacts that you can't, there's like from something that is so beyond you, you don't really have any way. It's like an ant trying to talk to a human, you know. It's like stuff like that, and I think that's really interesting. In the games, it's like a weird psychic field that is causing mutations and a bunch of other stuff, which is still interesting. I just think I like the alien idea more. There's also just an element of just like decay that I think is, there's something very appealing about going into a world that's kind of decaying. Like, I don't know what it is. There's I saw a video on this, and there was a guy talking about this too, but I was thinking about this, and then like that video kind of clarified a couple of things for me, made me think about it a little differently. But what, I wish I remember what it was called. I think it's something like moldy storytelling is best. I don't remember exactly, but the idea being that there's just something that's kind of naturally appealing about seeing a world in decay, as in like the part where it's like starting to shut down and something new would ideally be taking its place, but sometimes there's just, because of where things are and the way things are, there's just not really something that's going to come after that is maybe not seen as useful to us. But you know, there's all of this change and all this stuff going on that is so, it's just very wonderful. It really like brings me in. And you know, maybe this is also because lately I've been reading a lot about Nurgle, and I do find there's something kind of beautiful in like decay and rot. You know, seeing that really and truly this decay is just like another part of life. Like if the anomalies were just allowed to just continue to exist and were just to make things change more, there's still this this kind of energy of change that keeps going, but it would also eventually kind of become its own natural environment. Where the zone is like, there's a lot of things that are kind of wrong with the zone for like human life, but there's still like, it is an environment that has its own rules and its own understandings for why things work the way they work and what it means to, you know, like live in this world with all these changes going on, and what this means for what's possible. Because I mean, especially if you find out like what's really causing the zone, at least in this game, you're gonna find that is something that is This means that like the psychic energy is able to permeate the world and you can actually do something with it. This is like the beginning of a new epoch. This is the beginning of you're seeing people trying to figure this stuff out, and either it's not actually going to lead somewhere and the anomalies are just basically going to become borderline haunted chunks of rock, or there's going to be something more to this and we can like kind of explore it. But this is also an interesting take because it's also very funny. I'm supposed to go into the thing that's right over there to my right. I just don't notice it till I come back, but it's very funny to me. Like there is always like this kind of ground level thing too, where it's like every great change, especially ones that like really affect the material world, bring about people who are going to exploit it and are going to try and make, you know, get an opportunity out of it. You know, you kind of see that with like tech bros to a certain extent, and you see that with like, you know, capitalist cowboys, like the people who are like exploiting resources are trying to find new things to exploit. Like there's always this kind of like ground level thing when it comes to the unique nature of like new epochs and new technologies and new things like that. There's always people who immediately try to find a way, like, okay, so does this mean that there's an opportunity for like real wealth gain here, for instance? And if there is, what is it? Like, what can we gain out of these situations and stuff like that? And there's people who always think about it like that, rather than thinking about like the bigger picture, which is like, how do we make the whole population, how do we make the whole species, how do we make the whole of existence better? And you know, that's the category I would personally tend to put myself in more than anything, is trying to like find this new stuff and trying to benefit from it. It's part of the reason why like the stuff I like the most in. Oh, by the way, this happens a lot where I keep hitting E to interact with things because I'm dumb and I keep drinking the thing. But I like Fabius By a lot because he's pushing it and he's using like all this amazing like weird technology around him to make something new. We could argue that in many cases it's something horrible and new, but you know, there's also like some real creativity and some real changes that happen that I think are, you know, kind of worth paying attention to. And, you know, God gives us these catalysts all around us that can lead us into all kinds of different directions, you know, like there's the part we play in the divine play, and then there's also all of these other players, but there's also all these other elements, and we can kind of take any of these catalysts and go with them in numerous different directions. We can go with them all over the place, you know. It can be as simple as like, oh, you have a traumatic event in your life, but that traumatic event is a catalyst that can lead you down all kinds of different paths. If you don't resolve the trauma, if you don't try to work with the trauma or work out the trauma, you're going to end up, you know, in a worse place where things aren't working as well for you, and because you didn't deal with it, it like holds you back in a lot of ways. But then there's also the fact that you can deal with trauma, and by dealing with trauma you can make it so that you progress and grow so much more. And if you do it right, you can really see, here I do it again, which is funny, but you can make it so that you're having much more going on, and so that there's also a lot more benefit, not just to you, but to, you know, the people around you. Because if you learn how to deal with trauma, you can help other people deal with their trauma and things like that. So that's a catalyst. There are catalysts that we might traditionally understand as good and bad, but you can use these in a lot of different ways and kind of... Oh, look, a dead guy. And he had a single thing. I'm gonna take that thing. But catalyst can push us in all kinds of different directions, and one of the things that's really good and can be very helpful is to understand that catalyst will take you in all kinds of different directions, and you know, sometimes those directions are completely unexpected, and you know, sometimes it's really hard to know like where exactly something will take you, but by taking those things and going with them and really trying to change and benefit yourself and others, you know, is ultimately, I think a very worthwhile goal, something that's very worth going towards. And I think that you can choose how you interact with these things, and you can choose how you interact with like difficult times and things like that. And I often like to think, I always come back to this prayer. It's one of my favorite prayers. It's the prayer of Saint Francis, but you know, I'll repeat it here. Is Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. And see, I take a lot of that to mean that like what we're trying to do is we're trying to become this instrument of peace. We're taking, you know, the difficulties we have and we're using them to develop as people, and you know, we can use them to develop in our faith, and we can use them to develop in just our everyday life. And you know, there's also things where dealing with difficulty can actually strengthen your faith quite a bit, because once you know that you can deal with something, that you can call on God for help, and that you can get past a lot of difficulties, and that there's more strength in you than you realize, that's when those catalysts become a really good thing for you. And of course the catalysts, so much of it is like it's a tool. You need to like look at it the right way, the same way, you know, religion and all this stuff is a tool. You know, like religion has these rules and stuff, but there's ultimately a goal. There's whether it's achieving peace, achieving a relationship with God, or you know, attaining nirvana, whatever your goal is, there is these things that these religions are supposed to be helping us and pointing us towards. And you know, it's like what the Buddha says about like the raft and his dharma is like, the dharma is a raft and it's supposed to get you across the river. Once you're across the river, you don't keep you don't like bring the raft with you. There's times when you need to be willing to grow and expand outside of the raft that you've created for yourself, and grow and expand outside of where your difficulties are and things like that. And you need to be able to use those difficulties to grow as a person, rather than simply letting those kind of overcome you, and letting those difficulties bind you in such a way where you're not truly, I did it again, where you're not truly letting them grow you. Because that's another thing, is like a lot of these difficulties can kind of hinder you if you don't know what you're doing or how to deal with them. A lot, I mean, like a catalyst, like, I mean, these artifacts, for instance, are they can be great or they can be terrible, and they can do so many things for you. But you know, because people are letting their greed lead them, and you know, a lot of these things end up becoming much more dangerous than you know, the people previously thought, oh look, it's one of those big spooky guys who goes invisible. But I have a good idea. See, this limits where the guy can come at me. And that's like one of the big things is that sometimes we don't always let ourselves experience these catalysts, and sometimes we also have such an avoidance for bad things that we don't really let ourselves experience them and try to grow from that trauma. We don't let ourselves process that trauma. We don't want to deal with the difficulties, so we'll push it down. But ultimately, you know, these catalysts that come into our lives are so important and can do so much for us. Sometimes a lot of it is also just, you know, recognizing that these things are happening, but also coming to terms with the idea that we're not always going to be ready for every catalyst that comes along. But that doesn't mean that you just give up on it. What it means is that you take the time to try to develop those skills, you know, rather than, you know, hoping and praying that no bad thing ever happens to you. You should instead hope and pray that you have the strength to withstand whatever comes along, that you can make the right choices, that you can do good things and are willing to move past certain difficulties. And, you know, when I say you forgive people, like, you can move past those difficulties. That doesn't necessarily mean you forget. I mean, if someone's done something that really hurt you or really hurt people around you, it's good to understand that that's a part of them, or, you know, something has happened at least, and you can't just completely move on from it all the time. But there is a real peace in coming to accept those difficulties and those parts of people. There's a real peace in that, and there's a real peace in being able to use those and push forward with them, because it also shows you that you have this strength you need to endure these things and to grow with them. That's part of the real difficulty of this journey, but it's also what makes it so enriching to... Oh, and then I got zapped a bunch. Don't go through lightning, kids. And sometimes you just really need clarity and the ability to detach from the situation as well, to be able to see where a catalyst can take you. Because it can be very hard in the moment when everything's going wrong to embrace that change, because the change can be very difficult. Change can be very challenging, obviously, because it can make you think, am I strong enough to deal with this? Am I worthy to deal with this? You know, I've talked to a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm in a wilderness with my relationship with God. I've heard people say that a lot, and it's like, yeah, there can be difficult times, but you can always turn back to God and always, you know, give up your heart wholeheartedly and really understand that the basis of all being is in God. Or, you know, if you don't believe in God, understand that we are still all interconnected. There's interbeing among all of us, and that we have these different things that influence us. And understand that something that's a great catalyst for you might be almost like devastating for somebody else. If it doesn't, you know, a lot of it is you having your mental faculties in line, and, you know, having that mental fortitude to deal with certain difficulties that otherwise might ruin you. You might have to have the time to be willing to work with that trauma. And, you know, it's sort of like when we talk about meditation. Meditation is a practice where, like, it's not like you meditate once and everything is now peachy keen hunky dory forever. No, you have to continue to work with it. You have to use that meditation as, in this example, a catalyst for moving forward, or you can use it just as a stabilizing element too, as an element where you are like in a roiling ocean of turmoil and trauma and all these other things that could be going on, you can use meditation as like this stabilizing factor to make things so much better for you if you're willing to take those difficulties and really forge them and reforge them into something that will bring you inner strength and peace. That's what you really need. You need to be willing to take the time and the effort to do it is one part of it, but you also need to be willing and able to understand your faults, and also the time and the effort is like the most key part. Some things are just not going to turn around if it's just given a little bit of time. Some things are going to take a lot of time, and some things are going to take, you know, multiple sessions of trying to deal with it and multiple times of doing that. And sometimes it's just going to be a thing where that trauma can be around for a long time and it can develop and, you know, maybe hurt you a little, but it can also help grow you later on when you're unsure what you're doing or why you're doing what you're doing. And, you know, if you're willing to be analytical and take that step to really examine those catalysts around you, it can be, you know, absolutely wonderful. It can really help you change for the better. I did it again. And that's really what we're looking for. That's really what we're like kind of aspiring to do. So that's just what's been on my mind lately. This was the first 30 minutes of Stalker. I am really liking it thus far, and I would highly suggest if you're a fan of these kinds of games, if you're a fan of the other Stalker games or any of that stuff, I would really highly recommend this game thus far. It's been a lot of fun, and I think it's really worth it. And also, look, ratties. Anyway, I hope that you all have an absolutely wonderful time, and remember the blessings of God in your life. And I hope that you know that I love you and God loves you, and that you do have meaning and purpose, and there is hope no matter what difficulties you're dealing with, and you can use those as catalysts to grow. Okie dokie? Okie dokie. All right, bye, love you, bye. God loves you, bye. Have a great one, bye, bye. Love you, bye. I love you, bye. And love you, bye.